I'm going to talk to you today about building something from nothing. In essence, that is what we're talking about. If you go to the first slide.
The next one. There. Okay.
Everyone has to start somewhere, right? Well, normally your quality journey, if you're in a company, normally starts from faster. Something terrible happens in production, right? Or you have a series of unfortunate events. And what that does is the executive team or the CEO or the board says never again. And that's where the quality journey begins. And I did put a quote in here that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So I want to talk about the typical responses of a company to this kind of catastrophe or series of events. Normally it falls into three categories, and I have arbitrarily named them. And we're going to start with win-win. And because it's win-win, most companies do not start this way, but I am going to mention it. A win-win is if you hire an expert. As a company, you hire an expert, a quality expert, to come in and give you suggestions on how to move from point A, which is where you are, to point B, which is where you want to be. The reason that's a win for your company is normally you can hire somebody you can't normally get any other way, whether it's due to cost or the fact that they're not really looking for full-time opportunities. So you can truly hire an expert to help you out. You are not investing in people or tools. You aren't putting money into something you don't really understand. And it informs you in terms of what you need to do for your budgeting for the next budget go round. It enables you to hire the right talent because you have some idea of what talent you need. The overall, you can sit down as an executive or a leadership team and cherry pick what you do and do not want to implement. So it just informs you in terms of your next step. And it costs you a fraction of what it does to do things in another way. Because it allows you to move forward in a more deliberate fashion that is definitely going to impact your company in a positive way. What is normal is what I call lose-lose. And the reason it's lose-lose is you hire a couple quality people and you may not understand what kind of people you need. And you throw them on development teams and you wait for magic to occur. Surprise, that magic probably won't occur. If you are fortunate and you hired good people, you may see some improvement on those development teams and you may not. If you have no vision in mind and you don't have any goals and you don't know what direction you're going in, your chances of success are not very high. And from the perspective of the people you've hired, the reason it's lose-lose is a lot of times they feel isolated. You don't really understand their work. Nobody understands their work. They're under the gun. They work a lot of OT. Lots of things are going wrong, and it's not their job to fix processes and do strategic work. They're there to do tactical work. Write test plans, write tests, automate, whatever it is. There's a difference between tactical work and strategic work. So if you're hiring tactical players, getting from point A to point B is going to require some strategy, and you won't have those kind of people on board, at least not yet. And the worst thing from my perspective is it'll take you a year or two to realize this solution isn't really doing what you were hoping it would do. So you more or less stall or delay your quality progress for a year or two. And the last is what I call the crapshoot. A lot of times, if you just hire a few people, your next step is to say, this isn't working. We're going to hire somebody to head up our QA organization or head up our QA solutions and let them worry about it. It's a crapshoot because you still aren't well informed necessarily about what you need. So your success is predicated on hiring the right person for your company. And companies are not the same. Everybody's different. So let's focus on turning the crapshoot into a win-win. Crafting a job description. And this is more dense than I normally make my slides, by the way, but this is in case you want to refer to this later. When you are crafting a job description, you're going to look for somebody for your company. A lot of times what people do is they steal a job description from somewhere on the net, right? And they put in a few specifics in regards to their own tech stack and call it a day. You need to minimally take a look at your organization. If you are highly structured, very political, lots of red tape, lots of documentation, and you're highly regulated, you do not want, I'm sorry, I don't have a lighter on me. You don't want a free bird, who's highly innovative, highly creative, thought leader, wants to do all the newest, the latest, the greatest things. That is the wrong person for your environment. And the reverse, say that your development organization is a creative free-for-all. What is it going to be like for your company if you hire somebody who's highly structured? First you do this, and then you do this, and then you find out this, and then you do this. They'll become crazy. And they will not be able to help you very much. So at the very least, look at what you've got going in your company and put some of those elements into your job description. If you say, I want a flexible, innovative thought leader, you are going to attract those kind of people through your job description. If you have a highly structured, highly regulated environment, put that into your job description, because people with that kind of background are going to be attracted by that. So this is just a little hint to try to help you hire the right person for your job at your company. In the QA world, something to remember is certifications and degrees are all right with me. They're good. However, there is a lot of focus right now on STEM, isn't there? I've worked for companies who would not hire somebody without a STEM degree, not only a STEM degree, but a STEM degree from a good school. What does a good school mean? Okay. And STEM, by the way, is science, technology, engineering, right? So for those of you that are not familiar with the term, but it's very common right now. You have to lose those kind of prejudices with QA. There is not, other than places like this, there are not a lot of ways to get the knowledge that you need to be competent in the field, except by doing the work. Experience trumps certifications and degrees, particularly in the QA space. So keep that in mind. Next. You always need to hire, by the way, the best you can afford. Don't look for bargains. This is not the time to look for bargains, especially when you're starting out. As a job seeker, we're going to switch gears now. When you're a job seeker, titles are free. I tell people this all the time. They can call me queen of the known universe, and I can make minimum wage. Titles are free. You need to focus on what the job is, not what it's called. Now, within that company, a certain title may denote certain things. You can be aware of that. But still, titles are meaningless. What matters is your authority, your budget, right? Those kind of things make a difference. But you need to look, you need to be prepared for one thing. Do your homework. Go to Glassdoor. Find out what people think of the company. Download their apps and play with them. That will tell you, are you walking into a complex set of apps? Are you walking into something that is relatively simple? And if you can download the app, go out on the net. There are a million sites that will give you ratings on that app. Find out what the customers think of the quality of the products. That will give you some clue as to what is actually needed to lift the company up and improve their quality, at least from the perspective of their customers. Sometimes you will find what their biggest problems are things that you cannot really do from a software perspective. You can have killer apps, and if your customer support is bad, people will not want to do business with you. You need to choose opportunities that align with your values and your experience. Now, there's no point me telling you this. If you want to, if it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're being paid, nothing I say here is going to matter. And I'm trying to think of a polite way to say, if you want to be a corporate whore, that's up to you. But if you're going to sell your mercenaries, a nicer term, thank you very much. But if you're going to sell yourself for money, be aware of what you're getting into. Because if you're going to do, you don't care, you're going to do whatever you need to do because of the money, then you're doing it because of the money. But if it's a bad situation, you chose it. That was totally up to you. Obvious red flags in a job description. These are just things to be aware of. You can learn a lot from a job description. What is the number one thing that I look for as far as red flag? Must wear many hats. Okay. I can tell by the laughter, many of you have read something like that. I read a job description where it said they wanted the head of quality, they were looking for a director to gather requirements, write test plans, write test cases, test, report defects, build the automation framework, and automate. What is wrong with this picture? Those are 4 jobs, 4 full-time jobs that they want this one role to play. And the thing is, you may be able to do all those jobs. Yes. You may be able to do all those jobs, but you'll do them poorly. And your real job as a director is strategic. You shouldn't be writing test cases. You shouldn't be doing automation. Any talented senior SDET, which is the software development engineer and test, should be able to build an automation framework. Okay. So you should not be doing those things. You should be setting up the framework and working with your peers and your management on how the flow is going to go and handling problems as they come up and managing people. So that's something to be aware of when you're reading a job description. The first question you should ask when you're in an interview that has something like that in the job description is what's my budget? I will be willing to bet you anything that you care to put up, that their answer is going to be, we're expecting this position to tell us what's needed. Doesn't that sound sexy? Oh, that is so seductive. I'm going to tell them what I need, and they are going to hand me all this money on a platter, and I'm just going to go build it. Not. Okay, it's not going to happen. Everybody here is an intelligent professional person. You know how companies work. How often do they budget? Once a year, right? If they have not put any money aside, build this organization, you are probably going to be it until the next budget go round. So your next question is, what do you expect from this position between now and when your next budget is built? Because you may end up wearing all those hats. Just be aware of it. Normally, if somebody is serious about QA, they are going to put aside at least some budget to start with. If they don't, it doesn't mean don't take the job. If you like all the other elements, you love the people you'd be working with, go ahead. Just be aware of what that actually means. In my case, I would run screaming in the opposite direction. But just be aware of what that means. If there's no budget, there's probably not going to be any budget. If you get budget, you'll have to steal it from somebody else. And guess what? They aren't going to want to give it to you. You do also need to ask probing questions and not be afraid to walk away. You know, I've heard that the market is brutal. Okay. I've looked for jobs before in markets that were brutal. But there is always a market for talented, experienced people. Always. It may take a little longer because we have a global market now. That's what remote work does. Okay. But there is always a market for talented people. I've never regretted a job I walked away from, but I've regretted a few that I've taken. So just keep that in mind. You have to have a vision. Here is the Taj Mahal. Okay. You saw the popsicle sticks in the beginning. You have to have something to work towards. If you don't, you're just going to kind of flail around. And you may hit some high points and low points, but if you're moving in some direction, you have a better chance for success. This is how you figure out what needs to be done. You do an assessment, just like a consultant would. And an assessment, there's a fine art to it. And the first thing you have to do, and it's so hard to do, is lose your ego. Lose your preferences, lose your prejudices, and we all have them. You may think that you do not, you probably do. You may have a favorite project management style. Maybe you love Scrum, maybe you love Kanban, maybe you love Waterfall. It doesn't matter what it is you love. You may love certain tools. You may love to hire certain kind of people. All of those things are prejudices, and you need to lose them when you're doing an assessment. An assessment starts with a blank slate, and this is very hard to do. So, an assessment interview, you're interviewing your management, your peers, and your people if you haven't. Okay. What you build has to support the corporate vision. So I always, and this is my experience, I always go from the top down because I've actually walked the walk. I know what kind of problems quality analysts SDETs, automators, performance test engineers. I know what kind of problems they're going to have. What I don't know is how what they're doing is going to fit into the corporate vision. And what your group does, what the quality organization and the quality solutions do, has to support the corporate vision. If it doesn't, you're not going to be successful in trying to set something up. So if you start from the top, if you can talk to the CEO, talk to the CEO. If you can talk to the VPs, talk to the VPs. Go as high up as you can go and work your way down. And as you're doing that, the empathetic start building those relationships and understanding and make no judgments about what you hear. Just use active listening and take lots of notes. You're on effect on your mission. This is your mission, should you choose to accept it. Here are the kinds of questions you want to ask. What problems, and these are of your management and your peers, what problems would you like to see QA solve? You would be surprised at the difference you may get from a CEO level or a C-level manager and your peers. This is very interesting information that you'll be gathering. You want to know what they think success is going to look like because you want to build something that is going to feed that success. What would you not like to see from QA? This is almost as important as the first question. There are things that if you're working with a company that's never had any kind of QA solution at all, a lot of people are afraid of QA. It'll make things take longer. It'll drag down the process. It will do this. It will do that. You need to listen to what their fears are and what they want you to not mess with. Because that will help inform you as to what the solution needs to be. What is your perception of QA right now? That will help inform you too. Because they may, if you have existing people, they may just say it sucks. Okay. Or it's absolutely great. We don't need to make any changes. How do you handle interaction with, or how do you do QA right now? Again, that tells you where you are right now. What would success look like from your perspective? This is very important. Again, you don't promise anything. You just listen and you show empathy and understanding and take a lot of notes. Ask your QA staff. This is very different. And you normally move from company team-based questions to more personal questions. You want people to feel comfortable with you so that they will confide in you. What problems do you have right now and how would you like me to help? What does your typical workflow look like? How do you do your job? Where do you store your test assets and results and defects? What tools do you use? How does your team handle defects? I get a lot of interesting answers to that one. What happens when errors are found in production? This is where it starts getting more personal. You don't want to worry people. You know, a lot of times people are afraid you're coming in to be a hatchet person. That's why you work into these kind of questions. How did you learn how to test? Have you had any formal training? A lot of people are embarrassed to say, no, I haven't. Well, guess what? There's not a lot of formal training available. So it's not surprising if the answer is no. Is there training you'd like to have? What kind of training? How do you keep up with what's happening in the QA field? It is the people in this room it's kind of obvious what you do to keep up with the field. But it is surprising how many people just go in and do their job and they don't know what's happening in the field. They don't get involved with their field. They have not invested in their career. And it's good to know who the haves and the have-nots are in this regard, not because the have-nots are lesser people, but the people who are heavily invested and are into it kind of want to tag that in the back of your mind, because these are people, ambitious people, innovative, creative people. A lot of times, these are the people that can help you move forward. What are you looking for in terms of career? This is important if you're going to have a team. Sometimes you will have somebody, and it can be hard, who wants to be a manager and they have no idea what that actually involves, and they are terrible with people. Someone who's terrible with people should not be handling people as a career. So you may be looking at ways that you can gently turn them in another direction where they can be successful and your company can be successful, but they can still get that gratification of having a career where they have moved up and they have achieved some level of eminence that makes them feel good about themselves and makes them successful. You need to review all of the assets. And this is something you should do personally. Look at the processes, the test plans, the test cases and defects, auto tests and runs, performance tests and runs, and stats if they exist. Now, if you've done your homework and you've downloaded the app, say it's a banking app, which tend to be kind of complex, so does insurance or a lot of federal type of things. Okay. So you have something relatively complex, and what exists are maybe 20, 24 tests stored in Word. Okay, you already know you have a problem because you've taken a look at those apps and you know there's an issue. The defects tell you where the biggest weaknesses are and what teams are having the most problems. If there have been tons of auto runs and they never find any issues, but there's still a high error rate in production, you have a problem. So this actual review of assets tells you where the problems are specifically on the QA team. It doesn't tell you why those problems exist. It just tells you what the problems are. So build a plan. Now you've got everything you need, and you should, as you go and with each interview and as you review the test assets, you're going to see a picture is going to develop. It's like magic. Okay. It's like if you're cooking split pea soup, there's a magic moment when it turns to mush. Okay. Take everything you've learned, put it together. Here's a trick. A trick. When you are an FTE and you want to get the support and the budget and the respect from your peers and your management, show through your assessment that you have been listening to them and you have taken what concerns them and what they believe into account. As a consultant, you never name names. You may say development is not interested in A, B, and C. And of course, you're going to be professional. So when you're putting together the assessment as a full-time employee, you're not going to say Bob wants the debt. Okay, that is not going to be helpful to you, and Bob is going to feel attacked. However, if Bob is concerned that the QA solution may extend timeframes and deadlines, you can actually put that into your assessment. There is a concern. Bob mentioned a concern about this extending timeframes and deadlines. And that can be addressed by doing A, B, and C. What does that say? That tells Bob you listen to him. It tells everybody in the room that you've actually thought about it and come up with some strategies for handling that. So that's, again, that's a win-win for everybody involved. Your assessment should include short-term recommendations. There's always something you can do. And some of those things cost nothing. And some of those things are long-term. We need to hire this many people. We need to purchase these tools that you give a rough time frame. In other words, you're coming up with a rough roadmap. Next slide. You have to negotiate. If you don't know how to negotiate, take a class. And negotiation is not about you winning. Negotiating is coming up with a solution where both sides get something out of it. You need to stay flexible. You need to be positive, and that's hard to do sometimes. And you need to negotiate your vision and plan until a consensus is made. So that means you're going to have to give a little, and you will hopefully get a lot out of that. You aren't going to win everything. You just aren't. So if you're the kind of person that has to win, you're a bulldog. You're going right for the throat. It's going to be tough for you to come out ahead that way. So pick your battles. Some things, look at what you need the most and focus on those things and give a little on those things that don't need it or are not a concern immediately. It's not my way or the highway. It's our way or the highway. And you need to keep that in mind. When you're building for a company, unless it's your company, meaning you own it, it's not about you. It's about the corporate vision. And you should be helping to build towards the corporate vision. So that's why you need to lose your ego when you're going through this process. It could be that some of the things, the tools that that company really needs are not your favorite tools. And it's not your favorite way of doing things. Doesn't matter. What you're trying to do is what is in the best interest of the company. And if you do your assessment and you do your job that way, you are going to be successful, because it's hard for anybody to resist somebody who's trying to help them. So implementing the plan, there are common problems when you're trying to implement a plan. You have no budget, you have no staff. That's probably number one. That's a problem, all right. There are too many errors in production and you have a manual testing. They want everything to be automated. People think everything being automated is some new idea. It's been for over 20 years. Everybody has wanted to have everything automated. Okay, for over 20 years. But wanting to automate with no test space, it's like automate what? Starting from what? Testing takes too long. I think the reason I wanted to retire is after 40 years, I got so tired of hearing that. Testing takes too long. Yeah, I guess so. Development takes too long. Marketing takes too long. Everything takes too long. There are too many errors in production, and your test space is on. Okay, so let's talk about no budget, no staff. Here are some possible solutions, and we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. Take the team with the worst problems. This is not a time to take low-hanging fruit. Identify the team that has the worst problems in production or is having the worst quality issues. That's the one you want to tackle, because if you can solve their problems, everybody's going to want to jump on board and want a piece of that action. Choose the worst team and do it yourself. If you're the only person, that's the team you choose. And it's actually easier than you might think, because if you're a manager or director or VP, the developers and the members of the team are going to be much less likely to push back at you than if you're a quality analyst put on a team. It's unfortunate, but it's the way reality works. So choose the worst team to work with first. Tools are often easier to obtain than people. So take a look at the tool base and see if there's something there that can help you out. The move to a true agile team environment where the team is responsible for all aspects of the product, including testing. So if you have one person who's a tester, an agile team is supposed to handle all elements of the product. You actually have 5 people on that team, not 1, 5. So when it's pedal to the metal and you have one day to do a 1-week job, drag everybody on the team. Set up some events. These can be a lot of fun. I've done this multiple times. Set up some company-wide events where you do mock testing on a new feature or a new function. And everybody gets together at the same time and just beats on it before it goes to production. This can uncover very interesting errors if you have non-technical people who actually know the product working on the testing. Too many errors in production. This is if you have a manual staff. Training your testing staff. I don't know if you're familiar with the piece of art, Venus on the Half Shell. Venus is born from a clamshell fully formed. Well, guess what? Testing people that doesn't happen with testing people. They have to be trained and they have to practice. And you've asked those questions during your interviews with them. So you know who has been trained and who has not, but you aren't born a great tester. You learn how to test. And you can help those that are talented testers on your team, help those that are new or have not had training. Or you can do something I've done many times is run a boot camp where everybody has to attend. Teach people how to test and teach people these techniques that maybe they don't know or they've never been exposed to and go from there. Does AI make sense? This is something that is also in the too many errors in production automated. AI is a tool like any other tool. If you have no test space and you don't have experienced testers, or your testers are SDETs, they are software development engineers and tests, which means they tend to miss the same things that developers miss when they're testing. They may not look at the system from a user perspective. I know many developers that have not even known how to log into the system and use it as a user. And you probably have to. What they know is their area of code, not everything. So AI, let me see if I have time to, yes, I'm going to tell a real quick story here. I attended a conference, much like this conference, and there was somebody talking about AI and how great it was and how it could write all the test cases for you. Whoa. And they said they looked at this site and they talked about what the site was, and they said they had figured 24 to 28 test cases, right? The AI tool found 258. Now, I didn't say anything, and I waited till the end of the conference, and I went to that same site. All I did was count the things I clicked through. That's it. I didn't put them together into scenarios. No. I had 310 in 10 minutes. Okay. No, I did not jump up and down and say, I'm better than AI. Um, what I came to different conclusions. One thing I concluded is the wrong people were training the AI. What if somebody like me had trained the AI? Maybe 3,000 tests would have been found. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, I was not the person on their team in their company. The fact of the matter is that AI tool found 10 times more tests than that individual. So when you're looking at AI as a tool, consider who you have on your team. All you have may be SDETs, all you have may be developers, and an AI tool may find 10 times the amount of errors that they would. Unless you're going to totally replace them with test analysts or quality analysts, AI may make sense. But look at it with a grain of salt. Is it better than a really talented tester? No, probably not. And AI is not a person. Doesn't understand humor. It doesn't understand boredom. It doesn't understand curiosity. It doesn't understand anything having to do with the human state. So look at your processes and ensure that fixing and finding errors priority and fix those. That's a no-brainer. Okay. Too many errors in production automated. We're going to start flying now. Who define the test base, train them. And if they're developers or SDETs, consider AI. We talked about that. Consider when the tests were run in what environment and using what test data. Sometimes it's not the tests. The key to good testing is running the right test at the right time in the right environment with the right data. And to me, it doesn't matter if it's an automated test or it's done by a human being. If it's the right test at the right time in the right environment with the right data, you will find errors if there are errors to be found. Automation with no test base. Every company wants an automated test base. Is there a test set? Again, you can consider AI for this. Start automation with low-hanging fruit. You heard that if you heard Beth talking. You don't start out doing the most complicated things. You do the easiest things and you work towards that. And that is the smoke tests give you big bang for your buck, unit tests, and then regression tests last, if you even want to go that route. Consider building or hiring offshore or remote teams. Because while you are working on other things having to do with this bill, you can have a team working on some of these things in the background. Next slide. Testing takes too long. As a leader, 75% of your time is going to be spent in education. In 40 years, 75% of my time has been spent in education. Teaching others what quality is, what quality isn't, what you can do, and what you cannot do. Evaluate processes, risk-based testing. We're familiar with this. That's another thing about AI. You've got 258 tests. How many of them matter? If they failed, would it stop you from going to production? If the answer is no, then cut it out if you've got time constraints. Levels of documentation and tools. Look at your tools. Where can they help you? Where are they hurting you? Levels of documentation. You can do test case light. You can have structured test outlines where everybody on the team knows what those things mean, but you're not writing out or waiting for full-fledged test cases. Quality ownership. We've talked about this. Move responsibility from one person to the whole team. So instead of one person, you've got 5 people. That makes a huge difference. Where can automation help you? Where will it hinder you? And again, you can consider AI.
5 minutes.
Okay. These are my final thoughts, so I'm just going to make it. This is a huge topic, and I'm sorry to fly through it. I'm really just hitting the tip of the iceberg here. Pick your battles. We talked about this. Negotiate, collaborate. Hire people better than you are, and then take care of them. I always hire people that I think are going to be, that are either better than I am at something, or I think can be better than I am. A lot of people are too insecure to do that, but you are viewed as your team. If somebody says, oh my God, Linda's team is killer, Linda looks good. Okay. If somebody says, oh man, Linda's team, right? You are your team. So take care of your people. Recognize and appreciate others as you move towards B. Started at A and you're moving towards B. When you have people that help you out or a development team that really improves, bring it up. There is nothing like QA saying your team did an awesome job, right? A lot of times the CEO will take notice of that and will also praise the team. So always, not only your own team, but other teams. Problems don't go away if you ignore them. Don't do this to yourself. Tackle it head on right away, no matter what the problem is. Be persistent. Be positive. There's always a solution. You may think that there's nothing you can do. Look at it from every angle you can. Ask for advice if you need it. There's always a solution for every problem. And try it. And if it doesn't work, toss it. You don't have to do anything. You only have to do things that help move your company and your team from point A to point B. Find a way. It doesn't have to be your way, right? It's not all about you. Move forward. Always just keep moving forward. You can do this. Okay. Here's the before, starting with a popsicle stick. Here's the after, something beautiful. Right. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You are in for this really awesome setup for this particular conference, and I have been to many, many, many of them. And this is always my favorite because it is practitioners. These are people just like you. These are your peers. These are people who have found solutions for what you run into every day. So please enjoy your time here. Thanks again.